Welcome. This is Everyday Paradoxes Tiny Truths About Becoming, a 16-part audio series based on my book. These are reflections on the quiet contradictions that shape our growth. I'm Leslie DeMello. In each episode, we'll sit with one small truth from ordinary life, where psychology meets contemplation and insight becomes practice. Let's begin. Chapter 4. You find clarity when you stop looking for it. On how understanding appears in stillness, not struggle. Today's paradox is clarity isn't something you chase, it's something you allow. So I want you to imagine that you're in a foggy field. I want you to imagine that you're standing in a foggy field. And at first, you can see the outline of the trees. That's all you can see, just the outline of the trees. But the moment you start to panic, the moment you panic and start to search for the direction and you start moving around, the fog thickens, your breath quickens. You lose the visibility that you were desperate for. But if instead you would stop, just place one hand on your heart, take a slow breath, something happens. The fog kind of starts thinning, the ground beneath you becomes clearer, and you can see that one step that you need to take, and then you can see the next step that you need to take. And clarity works exactly like that. The more we try to chase it, the more it runs away from us. But the more we slow down, the more it finds us. Before clarity arrives, most of us pass through a very familiar place. A space where the mind becomes loud, the mind becomes busy, the mind becomes restless. And it feels like we are working toward an answer. But what we are really doing is those same thoughts are circling in our mind again and again and again. We find ourselves in that space where the mind believes that thinking harder, that forcing it, that rationalizing it will somehow unlock the truth. Even though the truth, it only gets more blurred the more we chase it. We've all lived in this fog. I know that I have lived in this fog. It is that mental overactivity that feels productive but pulls us away from what is real. And it shows up in many small ways. It shows up in very small, very ordinary ways. You replay in your mind a conversation 20 times, trying to understand what someone meant, but you just end up getting more confused. Or you create those endless pros and cons list, but then you still feel stuck after that. Or you try to figure out your purpose, your next step, your relationship. But the harder you think, clarity just gets more blurred. And unfortunately, we mistake this mental activity for progress. But we need to remember that thinking is not the same as seeing. Thinking is not the same as seeing. So, going to the first prompt of today, take a moment. If you want to, you can close your eyes, or if your eyes are open, it's perfectly fine. And ask yourself gently, what is something I've been trying too hard to figure out lately? What is something that you've been trying too hard to figure out lately? Take a moment to breathe as you sit with this question. A few places to look. Possibly in your relationships. Are you trying to figure out what someone really feels? Or whether to stay in that relationship, whether to leave, whether to open up or to protect your heart? Or are you replaying conversations trying to find some hidden meaning? In your career, maybe it's trying to decide the next step at work. In yourself, your identity, forcing yourself to choose the next version of you, or trying to decide who you are becoming. In your health and well being, trying to figure out how to heal, how to change a habit, forcing yourself to change a habit. Or maybe in life decisions, trying to decide whether to move, whether to change something big, or whether to commit to a path. And the more you think, the less you know. What is something that you've been trying too hard to figure out lately? And whatever comes, let it come. It doesn't have to be right, it doesn't have to be complete. We are not trying to solve anything. We just need to recognize where we've been holding on too tightly. So, whatever it is that you've been trying too hard to figure out, simply recognizing it is the first step. So, now I want you to imagine a lake. When it's still, when it's perfectly still, it reflects the sky. Clear, it's steady, it's peaceful. But the moment you stir the water or you churn it with your hands or you try to force it to settle, it clouds, it muddies. Now, if you want the lake to become clear again, if you want the lake to become clear again, you don't work on the water. You work on your stillness. Your mind, our minds, is the lake. And overthinking is the stirring. Clarity rises from the bottom, and clarity rises when the surface is calm. And that's why the chapter says clarity doesn't come from thinking more, it comes from thinking less. Later on in the meditation, we will get to have an experience of this. Let me give some examples. Some examples when stillness reveals what thoughts can't. The first one is a very popular one. The answer comes during a shower, not during hours of overthinking. You spend all night trying to plan your future, and nothing's moving. The next morning or the next evening, you're standing under that warm water and boom, there it is. That simple answer, that clear answer, that effortless answer. Or you stop obsessing about a message that you need to send. And then suddenly the right words appear once you've given up. Or you take a short walk and suddenly you know what your next step is. You couldn't decide between two paths for weeks, you couldn't decide. But one quiet walk, no pressure, no thinking, and then suddenly something inside says, move this way. One of my favorite ones. You sleep on it and you wake up knowing what feels true. And this is one of my favorite ones, and this is the one I recommend to my friends, to my clients. This is the one I recommend. When they are stuck with a problem and they can't find a solution, the advice that I give them is in the night, before going to bed, you state your problem. Don't try to solve it. State your problem and go to sleep. 99% of the time, 99.9% of the time in the morning, they will end up with a solution which is an out of the box solution which they had not thought of before. Rather, it's a solution that their rationalizing could not have brought them to. So sleeping on it and waking up knowing what feels true. Or you stop trying to fix a feeling and clarity suddenly surfaces on its own. Some more examples. You take a break from the decision and the decision finds you. And in my job, I used to work as a programmer many years back. I used to work as a programmer and I used to work as a coder. And without knowing it, I was already doing this. When I would get stuck with something and I could not find a way to move forward, I would just leave it and go do something else. And while I was doing something else and not even thinking of the problem that I needed to solve, a solution would come. So taking a break from a decision and the decision finds you. Meditating for 10 minutes. And after that, the answer is obvious. So these are just some examples. Creativity unblocks when you stop forcing it. You close the laptop, you walk away from the canvas, and in that quiet pause, the idea flows back toward you. Clarity doesn't come from effort, clarity comes from space. Let's try something simple, a simple exercise, something that you can use in your real life, in your daily life. So, a simple exercise. Place one hand on your chest. Feel the weight. Feel the weight of that hand. Feel the warmth of that hand. Now take a slow inhale and a long, soft exhale. Let's do that again. A slow inhale, a long, soft exhale. One more slow inhale and a long, soft exhale. And silently ask yourself this question. If I wasn't trying to force clarity right now, what would feel softer? If I wasn't trying to force clarity right now, what would feel softer? And simply notice whatever comes. Notice whatever comes. Could be a sensation, could be a release. It could even be a truth that you didn't need to chase. And even if there's nothing, even if there's silence, that's perfectly fine. And whatever you have received, that's simply clarity entering through the back door. So, this simple exercise is something that you can try whenever you're confused, whenever you need to make a decision, whenever you're stuck in that loop of overthinking. A simple exercise. Take 3 breaths, hand on your heart, 3 slow breaths, and ask yourself the question: if I wasn't trying to force clarity right now, what would feel softer? So, before we go into the next prompt, let's ease our way into these prompts with a sense of presence, not pressure. So, once again, just take a slow breath. Doesn't need to be deep, just take a slow breath. And imagine you're standing at the edge of that quiet lake inside you. You're standing at the edge of that quiet lake inside you. The surface is still until the mind stirs it. Let's explore where that stirring happens in your life. Let's explore where that stirring happens in your life. The first prompt: where in my life am I stirring the lake? Where am I adding noise? When what I actually want to experience is space. In your relationships, maybe you're overthinking someone's words, or you're trying to decode what they feel. In decisions, maybe you're pushing yourself to choose before you're ready. In your identity, maybe you're forcing yourself to know who you are instead of just letting yourself evolve, or trying to fix a feeling instead of letting yourself feel it, or rushing growth. Yes, there's such a thing as rushing your growth, demanding answers before having that time to process, before having that time to assimilate. So, where in your life are you stirring the lake? If you're journaling, note it down. If you're not journaling, reflect on it. And just simply notice without judgment. We are noticing not to judge ourselves. We only want to see where the water is being stirred. Take a moment to reflect on this or to journal this. And what would happen if you stopped? What would happen if you stopped? Take another breath. Feel your body soften as you take that breath. And consider this: if I stopped stirring the lake, if I stopped trying to force clarity, what might begin to settle on its own? Maybe an answer would arise that you've been too loud to hear. Or maybe your body would reveal what your mind couldn't reveal. Or maybe that relief would appear even before clarity appears. Or the next step would become more obvious once that pressure softened. Maybe you'll feel like yourself again. Or maybe that truth that you've been avoiding would gently come to the surface. So take a moment to let yourself imagine that softness that might appear if you stopped stirring the water. What would happen if I stopped? knowing what you know today, would you still want to continue studying? So, once again, take a breath. If you were writing in your journal, place your journal in your lap. Whatever emerged is enough. You don't need to force an answer. You simply need to create the space for it. Because this is what clarity feels like when we stop stirring the lake. Stillness. Stillness. Many of us are uncomfortable with stillness. Many of us are uncomfortable with quiet. Many of us are uncomfortable when there is no noise. And if you notice nowadays, if we are at home alone, we can't just sit doing nothing. We will be either on our phones, or we will be watching television, or we will be trying to create something, or we will be working on something. For some reason, we have been programmed not to trust stillness. And we don't trust stillness simply because it feels like nothing is happening. We feel like we are wasting our time. But in that stillness, in that quiet, in that invisible realm, things are aligning, insights are forming, inner truths are rising. Clarity, like the bamboo plant, it grows underground first, like bamboo, like roots, like intuition. And sometimes clarity is the child of emptiness. When you cannot see the answer and you make that time for stillness, life starts to rearrange itself within you. Life starts to rearrange itself within you. So some examples of that stillness which we can think of as false emptiness, but it's actually insight. Any of you have been through a breakup? Immediately after the breakup, we tend to feel numb. But in that numbness, if we sit in that numbness, if we sit in that stillness without distracting ourselves, clarity about what we truly want starts to form. Or you suddenly leave a job, you feel lost. If you sit in stillness, your intuition will begin to whisper what aligns. After stepping away from a draining relationship, your boundaries become clear. The emptiness, the stillness, the quiet, it's not a void. It is simply a clearing. It's simply a clearing. Another practice, and I call this one the three doors of clarity. Think of these three doors as three gentle questions. These are three gentle questions that will help you feel your way out of confusion and into alignment. It will move you from confusion to alignment. And in answering these questions, there's no pressure and there's no perfection. Simply notice, let whatever comes come. Let yourself be honest to yourself. So the first door, what's feeling tight? What's feeling tight? What does your mind grip? And name that area. Name that thing without trying to solve it. Just name it. What does your mind grip? A relationship, a job, a decision, a shift. What does your mind grip? The second door asks us, what feels like relief? What feels like relief? Because relief is often the language of clarity. Relief is the body whispering yes. So what feels like relief? And the third door, my favorite door. What is the next smallest step? What's the next smallest step? Not a conclusion, not a plan, just the next step that feels honest. So the first door, what feels right? Not right. What feels tight? What feels tight? What's that thing that's bothering you? The second door, what feels like relief? And the third door, what is the smallest next step? The smallest next step. Why small steps? When we try to take a big step, the ego almost jumps in immediately because it senses a threat. It senses this big step as a threat. And that's when we start having all those feelings of fear of criticism and fear of judgment, and all these things come in. The fears start to come up. So the hack in order to avoid that is to take those small steps, because when we are taking the small steps, the ego looks at it and says, oh, so that's all that guy is doing. He's just clearing his table. Yeah, that's fine, we can live with that. Oh, he's gone and he's bought a couple of canvases. That's fine. We can live with that. He's gone and got himself a box of paints. Yeah, that's fine. We can live with that. It doesn't get threatened by those small steps. So, small steps, consistent. So, we'll now go into the guided meditation, and this meditation is titled The Clearing of the Lake. And I invite you to close your eyes if it is safe to do so and if you are comfortable doing so. Let your spine lengthen. Let your spine lengthen as if you're reaching for the sky. Relax your jaw and let your breath become soft and wide. Soft and wide. And imagine you're standing in a soft gray fog. A soft gray fog. Nothing is wrong. You just can't see that far ahead. Let that be okay. Let that be okay. Place your hand on your heart. Feel the warmth. Feel the honesty of this moment. You don't need answers here. only your presence. The fog begins to thin. You walk forward and you find yourself standing at the edge of a calm lake. The water is perfectly still. The water is perfectly still. This lake is your mind when it stops trying. And now bring to mind one question you've been holding too tightly. Bring to mind one question that you've been holding too tightly. Hold that question like a small stone. Now drop it gently into the lake. Watch the ripples. Do not chase them. Do not reach for the stone. Let it sink. Let the lake return to stillness. If a feeling rises, receive it. If nothing rises, receive that too. Not yet is a form of clarity. And take a slow inhale. A long exhale. Let awareness return to your body. Move your fingers, move your toes. And when you're ready, if your eyes were closed, you can open your eyes. And if you have your journal with you, I'm dropping in a question. What truth feels quieter, softer, or clearer now? What truth feels quieter, softer, or clearer now? Don't overthink. Write whatever comes. And if you're not journaling, simply reflect on it in your mind. What truth feels quieter, softer, or clearer now? There's a type of bamboo that spends years growing underground. Above the surface, nothing happens, nothing visible happens, just roots, just that unseen structure. And one day, seemingly out of nowhere, it just shoots up. It shoots up feet in days. And clarity is like that. It forms quietly, invisibly beneath the surface. When it comes all at once. That waiting is not empty. That waiting is simply preparation. So as we close, take one more slow breath and let your heart soften around this truth. You don't find clarity by looking harder. You find it by loosening the grip, by trusting the quiet, by letting the fog be fog until it chooses to lift. Letting the fog be fog until it chooses to lift. Clarity is not achieved, it's received. And today we have simply created that space for it to arrive. Thank you for listening. This has been Everyday Paradoxes, Tiny Truths About Becoming. Before you move on, you might sit quietly with these questions. What did I recognize in myself today? Where is this paradox quietly at work in my life? And what is one small shift I'm being invited toward? Becoming rarely announces itself. It unfolds in awareness, in small recognitions, in the gentle courage to see clearly. This series is based on my book Everyday Paradoxes, Tiny Truths About Becoming. It's a reflective guide meant to be read slowly, not for answers, but for insights that deepen with time. You'll find the reflection questions in the description along with details about the book. If this conversation resonated, you're welcome to like, share, or subscribe so these truths can reach others who may need them. Until next time, stay present, stay curious, and keep becoming.